Hey, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. I apologize for the skipped video last week. There were some things I had to get done and take care of, but we're back, and this week we'll be going through all the tank heroes and just one or two things that could make them better, but not in a way that'll make them broken. This series will be split into 4 videos: Tanks, DPS Part 1 and 2, and Supports. I realize that the game is not designed to have every hero equally balanced or viable at all times, but there are some ideas that range from really small buffs to huge entire reworks, which I think have a chance to be implemented if we pester Daddy Jeff about them. Of course, don't actually do that, please, but if you agree on a 1 point or a change, let me know in the comment section down below. If there are obviously enough people who like a change, I might just toss them a tweet or something, but enough of that, let's just hop right into it. We'll be starting on the left and moving to the right with the new hero select bar. Let's start with Deva. Now, I think she's actually still quite balanced in that her defense matrix, however still powerful, isn't a problem balance-wise. I think though that if you remove the defense matrix 1 second cooldown, it would be a lot more on demand, especially when you're in the middle of a fight and you've been trying to manage it effectively. I also realize this would be pretty broken since you can kind of delete everything that comes your way without giving the enemy a chance to deal damage, but it also has that really short duration that was nerfed a while back. I think it would be a good idea to diminish the range of it the more it's been spammed, and I know that Blizzard does use that sort of technology in the way that Hammond spread is used on his weapon. Another small thing is that I strongly believe that Deva should get an ability out of mech that's similar to Hanzo's Leap, just because she's really almost defenseless other than her ridiculously powerful pistol, but other than that there isn't much she can do except wait to die after her mech is gone. Alrighty, tank hero number 2, Orisa. Now, what can we possibly do to help out our robo-horse? Well, her shield cooldown, shape, and hit points are pretty okay. They changed those to make them better a while back. Her fortify is still pretty good. Maybe it can have a bit of an increased cooldown and increased duration, since it does grant the 50% damage taken modifier. I mean, it's not really too much of a problem though. I think her halts could definitely use just a little bit of extra range, like maybe a meter or two, which isn't that much, but I think it'd be useful for certain things. Other than that, maybe just some increased speed because she's a horse. You know, I mean, it makes sense to me that this quadruped, other than for stability, would have perks for having those 4 legs. And horses are generally faster than teenage girls, at least I'm pretty sure last time I checked. Other than that, if you bring back her ability to generate ultimate charge while her bomb goes down, and maybe decrease the amount of damage boost it gives, that might also be effective as well. Alrighty, moving on to Reinhardt. There are a couple of things that I can definitely talk about that I personally notice. Now, there's that obvious problem with the pin interactions still not working as they really should be, but that's an old can of worms that's already been open for a while. They're still working on it and it's been improving, so let's just move on to some other aspects. Now, if there's just one thing that I sometimes find would be really useful, it's kind of a quick melee, because you sometimes just don't have the time to get the hammer swing off before someone escapes. It's relatively okay and doesn't happen that often, but I think it can definitely be better if there's an alternative melee. As for other things, I think converting some of his HP more into armor, considering that's his whole purpose, would make a lot of sense. Of course, something minor like having half and half instead of 200 armor would go a pretty long way. As for other aspects, a passive ability that reduces the effects of movement impeding abilities, sort of like a sturdy effect, would be pretty effective. Just maybe a 25 or 50% stun reduction would also be a blessing, but it's unlikely considering it's not nearly as much of a problem as it was a couple of weeks ago. Improvements for Roadhog. Now, what we won't be doing is bringing back the one-shot combo. Instead, I think it might be about high time we could even give him another ability. Even though he's in a really good spot right now, I still think it would go far for him to get something that could really make him more of a team tank. For this, we'll have to dig around in the old idea bin full of concepts when he got nerfed into the ground. Let's see here, oh, there we go. So, here's a concept called Bodyguard, and this could either be a toggle ability or a passive. With this passive, damage dealt to surrounding teammates can be partially distributed to Roadhog. It wouldn't be very big, of course, maybe just 5 or 10% of the damage, but it would make a huge difference, I'm sure. Just imagine the whole team taking 10% less damage, while Roadhog uses his take a breather to negate basically all of the effects that it would have on him. At this point, for a passive, you'd probably have to bring down his healing cooldown pretty drastically so he doesn't die consistently. And then there's the idea of making it a toggle, which of course would probably be the better option considering how much trolling can be done with it. And then there's also the obvious limit where if Roadhog is going to die from the damage he takes for his team, then he just won't take the damage. It's as simple as judging the incoming damage to his hit points and just not going through with it. The final option to make this concept even more ridiculous and complex would be to change the percentage of damage he takes depending on how many allies are around him, decreasing it for a higher number of teammates. Oh wow, I've finally gone off the rails this time. Well, alright then, let's just move on to Winston. Now, you can't really change Winston's DPS, since that's kind of what keeps him from being too broken. You can, however, change his ammo, which I think is one of the only things I can see having a pretty good impact that probably won't make him too OP. It doesn't necessarily need to be too much, just like add 25 or 40, or at least reduce the rate of ammo consumption, because I often feel like Winston has to reload way too much in the middle of fights for the amount of DPS he puts out. The other option, I know I just said we shouldn't touch his DPS, but really the other side of the story would be upping the amount of ammo consumption per second and then increasing his DPS. This way there are pauses in his damage, but it also lets him burst more, and at least we should make his damage higher than Mercy's healing maybe? But then again, it'll murder all support mains while to live, so maybe not. I know you guys go through a lot, I'm here for you, so don't worry about that, we're not gonna do that, alright? So, other than that, there isn't really much else I can think of. Maybe just give him more DPS on his ult too? I always kind of felt like it was a little lackluster, but that's it for Winston. I feel like maybe we can do a little bit of a small mention for the newest tank, Wrecking Ball. I'll be calling him Hammond from now on in just about every video because the name Wrecking Ball just doesn't stick with me, so I'm just gonna let you know that ahead of time. So Hammond is pretty new, almost too new to have any real analysis on and what should be buffed or nerfed. I think though that he could use a little less drop off just like the other hit scans, because I think that combined with his high spread at long ranges makes him literally useless past medium range where he's really only just mediocre. At close range he's really good, and you could tweak the numbers a bit with his damage and drop it by 1 or 2 per shot, but that's essentially still fine. I think one of the biggest mechanical changes should be the option to make his grappling hook into a toggle instead of having to hold it down. It might just be that I'm not used to it, but honestly that would be the best feature to add right now. Finally, we have our last tank to touch on, and that will be Zarya. Now there are a couple of minor things I'd like to look at. First, I'd love it if there was a way to know how much health is on your bubble as it's deployed so you know when it will break. I know the timer on it isn't very long, and I know you can tell from the 40 energy you get, but I still think it would be pretty useful. Of course, you can also have it on other heroes, so you don't get to see the energy increase, but you still get to know how much your bubble has. Another idea that would change her pretty drastically is to have her bubbles up like a charge meter that runs out as they're being used. I can imagine how it works in my head, but I'm going to try my best to put it into comprehensible English. So, imagine that as she applies a bubble to another person, instead of using a cooldown, it can use half of the bar and apply the same bubble that we have right now to the teammate. That way she can apply more than one bubble to teammates at a time if she doesn't need one herself. And then when she uses it on herself, it acts like a Deva defense matrix and starts draining the bar, using the full bar to cover the time that would be applied to a bubble right now. The only difference is the way that the bubble breaks. I mean, if it makes her invulnerable, I think it should use the full bar for the 2 seconds. On the contrary, it could break and render her personal bubble unusable for a couple of seconds, similar to Reinhardt's barrier, and in that case, it should only use half of the bar. Using this system, I think it'll still allow Zarya to use more reactive bubbling, but it'll also provide more options for her in terms of tanking. Well, that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did or you agree with some of the improvements, make sure to drop a like down below as it really helps me out and grows the channel. Of course, if you're a little disappointed, leaving a dislike is just fine too. Either way, you obviously enjoy Overwatch as you clicked on this video for whatever reason, so why not subscribe, as I love Overwatch too, and these videos are made weekly. Also, don't forget to turn notifications on with the click of a bell so you can leave that first comment that you've always wanted to. This is Carl signing off, and as always, have a fantastic day.